Hey guys, Bradley back with a new series that we're going to dive into here on this beautiful 718 Porsche GT4 behind me. So this series is going to be dedicated to basically the whole process of this car. So it'll likely be a multi-part series going over the whole process of getting a newer vehicle and getting it kind of fully protected using all of our full suite of products and many others from other companies as well. So we're going to basically dive through the whole process of going through kind of an inspection, a full decon wash, a full paint correction. A little hint, the paint on this thing is very bad for the miles and the year that it is. So we're gonna have to see if we can get away with one-step correction or kind of have to go crazy and do a two-step, and we'll get into that as we go through the process. And then getting it fully protected with our full suite of coatings, doing the paint coating, glass coating, probably doing some plastic trim, full wheels off. We might go through the interior as well, just give that a little quick cleanup too. A little spoiler on this one, we do have a new coating we're going to be using that will be out or should be out by the time you're watching this video. If not, this may be a little spoiler alert, but we have our new version of our quartz coating that we're going to be laying down on this, which we'll show you guys throughout the process. So this Porsche behind me basically is a almost perfect example of this car, but it's not. It's a 2022. It's only got about 1,000 miles on it, so you would think it'd be perfect, but obviously it's been sitting around somewhere a lot, whether it's a dealership or someone's house, and they've definitely rubbed it, they've definitely touched it a lot, they've definitely washed it quite a bit. And I think from the factory, they also did some sanding and some pretty shoddy polishing on it. So we have a lot of kind of hazy spots, a lot of swirls, a lot of scratches. The paint just looks a little dull for what you expect a perfectly brand new black car to look like, which we all know is pretty normal. We do have some PPF on this car, which we'll have to kind of explain how to work around and how that process works, because the PPF does have a little bit of swirling. We're not going to rip the PPF off. It's a good enough install that we're just going to go ahead and leave it, but we're going to show you how to kind of clean that up a little bit, get the rest of the car kind of fully dialed in with either a one or a two-step correction, like we said, get the wheels taken off, get those coated, and get basically the whole vehicle coated. We do have some PPF up here that we're going to remove as well. The owner doesn't want. It's got like a partial hood, or not partial hood, partial roof, and a partial A-pillar. Kind of stops right here. It's just a little ugly, especially when you're getting in the car right here and you're just looking right at that line. It's got the full front done, which is good. So that's nice. But we're going to remove these pieces just because they look kind of ugly, and there's not that much risk of getting rock chips up this far, at least how this is going to be driven. So yeah, we'll take you guys through the whole process here on this one, and we'll cut right now and we'll show you guys everything you're going to need from our line and others to get the first part of this process done, which is the decon wash and prep stage. So we've got everything you're going to need laid out here on this cart to kind of do your standard decon or decontamination prep process. So you're really going to start with your wheels and tires. So we got our wheel cleaner, tire cleaner. I've got some clean here, diluted 4:1, which I'm going to be using for the wheel wells. You could also use this if you're doing, during your normal decon process, you might be doing your engine bay as well. This GT4 doesn't have, an engine bay that you can access, so I won't need that for this process, but I will be using it for the wheel wells. Then you're going to jump into your washing process. So we're going to be using our Decon soap for the decon wash, just a higher pH soap to get a little bit of stripping power and just extra cleaning power, some nice wash mitts, and then your main decon agent, which is our iron remover. I have it put into a nice pump sprayer. Just makes it easier while you're going through. You're not having to trigger spray the whole car and kind of ruining, getting your fingers a little tired there. And then I have for the clay process, we have our ultra clay scrubbers from TRC, and just some nice drying towels and things like that that you'll need to get the process done. So we will go ahead and get the car pulled out here, and we'll get that process going outside. Unfortunately, we are in Florida. We don't have drains in the floor here, so we're gonna have to go out in the sun for a little bit, but it'll show you guys the process can be fully done outside. I'm probably gonna be in the direct sunlight, which will show you, you can kind of get a feel for how I would work out in the direct sun as well. So as any good wash process starts, same with the Decon, you're gonna start with the wheels first, the dirtiest part, kind of get that knocked out. That way you're not spraying the car down with stuff and potentially leaving water spots and things like that on the paint, you know, to dry while you're doing the wheels. So we're gonna start with the wheels first. I've got I just put a couple ounces of Decon soap in my wheel bucket here. I like to put a little bit of soap in there just to give it some lubrication. It's not really, you know, for cleaning power or anything like that. And then I've got the foam cannon filled with Decon soap as well, or normal dilution, like 2 ounces into the full foam cannon. So just go ahead and I like to pre-rinse the wheels down. And then I spray always our wheel cleaner first, just because this needs a little bit of time to work really. So I'll spray that on first and give it its time to clean. Spray a couple, you know, sprays into the barrels themselves, and then spray the whole wheel down just to get that nice evenly covered. Then I'll go in with our clean for the fender wells. If I had my sprayer opened, it would work. This is diluted 4:1 again, and this is just a nice, you know, kind of spray. I'm not scrubbing the wheel wells per se, but I will, you know, spray this in there to get a nice, you know, degreasing and rinse them out. You'll get it, you know, 80% clean that way, which is totally, you know, fine. As soon as you drive again, it's just gonna, you know, get dirty, so no need to go crazy there. And then spray your tire cleaner. And allow that to dwell. So those will start breaking that down. You can already see the wheel cleaner is going to work, turning all sorts of purple and things like that. So that's had enough time to sit there. And then I will do a nice little extra step, super quick, just to get some nice foam and cleaning power. Foam the wheels down, so now you have all sorts of lubrication and you know, just a super safe wheel cleaning process. Now you don't really need to go too crazy cleaning the wheels, because, you know, again, we're going to coat these wheels, so they're going to come off and probably get lightly cleaned again. But I still like to clean them, you know, before. That way, you know, you're not dealing with a super dirty wheel when you're taking them off, and you know, you can get a 99% clean, you know, this way, and then you just do your final touch up once you get the wheels off. So I've got a multitude of brushes here, mostly from Detail Factory, that I'm going to go, you know, mini wheel brush, tire brush, and then our little, you know, wheel mitt, microfiber mitt. And I'm going to go through and just clean the wheels with these, hitting the barrels first. And you'll just see all that nasty brown gunk coming off. You know, these have only been driven a couple times, and you can already see how much, you know, gunk builds up just from a couple drives, which is, you know, pretty crazy. These cars produce so much brake dust, especially German cars. So having the iron remover in the wheel cleaner, you know, really helps break that down and just make sure that it doesn't build up over time. I know a lot of people like to use those just alkaline wheel cleaners, which are good, are super cheap, and you can use those for maintenance, but every once in a while you still want to use a wheel cleaner that has the iron remover built in, just so you're breaking down the stuff that's actually bonding to the wheel, because those alkaline wheel cleaners are just kind of getting the surface dirt off, maybe getting some of that brake dust unbonded from the wheel, but there's some brake dust that's going to bond to the wheel, and you really want that iron remover in there to, you know, help break that down and get that unbonded from the wheel. So, you know, again, periodically use an iron remover wheel cleaner, unless you got carbon ceramics. Carbon ceramics, you don't really need to use it because you don't have that brake dust that's going to, you know, seep into the wheel. There's a super simple wheel cleaning process, and you just give it a good rinse. I usually start with the wheel barrels, get that clean, all rinsed out that's been dwelling in there, get all the grit and grime and stuff rinsed out of there, and then you just rinse down the whole wheel. So there's your Decon prep wheel cleaning process. We'll continue that, get all the rest of the wheels done, and we'll get back to you with the next step of getting into washing the car. So the next part of the process might not be one that you need to do, but as we talk, this thing has full front PPF on the whole front, and then they did like a partial A-pillars and roof. Here in Florida, black car, we're lucky enough that it's been sitting out here for a little while. This is pretty hot to the touch, so I don't really need to use heat or a steamer or anything, especially since this film's fairly new, probably a couple years old. I can go ahead and peel this off right now. Again, it's not something that you'd really have to do, but we're pulling this off, so it's the next part of my process. So I literally just pick up the edge with my nail, and you can get it started. Again, we're using the sun to help us out here, so you don't have to use heat or anything like that. So now that I got it started, now you can pull up, and when you pull up on PPF, you don't want to pull, like I say, I'm pulling this part from here down, right? There's a piece here. I'm not going to pull this way. I'm actually going to pull it the opposite way, and that's going to keep the adhesive on the film rather than leaving it onto the paint. So you can see I'm pulling the opposite way and pulling that film up and out. Just keeps that adhesive intact rather than potentially leaving it on. So I'm just doing a nice soft pull. Like I said, this is nice and warm. It's coming off super easy. It's leaving no adhesive. So that's really what you want. If you have an older film, this removal method might not work. You might be, stuck to using a steamer or something like that. But this is probably 3 or 4 years old, and we can pull it off that way. Super simple. So obviously we removed that film on the A-pillars and the hood. The reason I did that now is because there's nice virgin paint under here that I want to make sure is decontaminated. I don't want to be decontaminating the film that I'm just eventually going to remove anyways. So got that off now during this process. So now this paint can get decontaminated and prepped properly like the rest of the car. So the next step of the process is kind of evaluating, all right, where are you at? So for me, I got usually a couple different ways I'm going to approach a decon wash, depending on how dirty the car is. This car is really not too dirty. It's really just been driven a couple times. The main reason for doing the decon wash on this car is, number one, to kind of just degrade whatever sealant might be on here a little bit, as well as to clay the car. I probably could have done a rinseless and done a super easy way to do it, but I like doing this process anyways, no matter what. But from here, you could go into a little bit crazier of a step where you'd leave it dry, you'd foam on your Decon soap, and then, let it dwell, rinse it off to get the main bulk of the dirt off, and then, foam and wash again. For me, since I know this car's not that dirty, I can see that, I don't feel the need to do the kind of touchless Decon wash right away, or the Decon rinse. So I'm just gonna go into just pre-rinse the car, super simple, and then I'm gonna foam on the Decon soap and proceed with the wash from there. Again, evaluate that for yourself. If your car's really dirty, I would hit it with leave it dry, hit it with the Decon soap in the foam, let it dwell for a bit, rinse it off. Now you got a slightly cleaner surface, then you can go into the foam and wash. But again, this car is very clean, so I don't need to do that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start rinsing and make this process a little bit easier on myself. So I've got this thing fully rinsed down now, so I'm good to proceed with my Decon foam. So I've got 2 ounces into the full foam can on this. Obviously I've used some when I did the wheels. You could do 2 to 3 ounces, depending on how much stripping power you need and really how much foam you want, depending on what your pressure washer setup is. But for mine, 2 ounces is plenty, and you'll see we'll get great foam with that. So when you're foaming, you can see I'm going pretty, slow movements, kind of like I'm painting the car, right? And I see a lot of people where they got this thing like full projectile, and they're like, going crazy. It's not going to do anything for you. Just keep it nice, wide open. slow movements. You're really just painting foam on the car to get that Decon soap to start working, and then also, you know, give you that lubrication while you're washing. So done with the foam cannon. And then in my bucket, I've got a couple ounces of the Decon soap as well. I just like to spray my wand in there and get it kind of agitated, get some nice suds going. Get that all mixed in there. It's a nice visual appeal. You get to play with some soap. And from here, you're gonna start washing. So now, you know, if you're washing outside like me, which you probably are, most people don't have an indoor wash bay, you're gonna have to play with the sun a little bit. So I'm gonna actually try to wash the side that is in the shade first, and then go to the side that's in the sun. That way, when I'm done with the side in the sun, I can rinse that faster, you know, than if I were to wash that now, it'd sit longer and potentially bake the soap in. So if I wash that last and then rinse it last, you know, right away, it will, you know, potentially not let that soap, you know, dry up. And just monitor it. Walk around the car every once in a while, and if your soap's starting to dry, just give it a rinse, you know, just to kind of give some water to the surface, or, you know, just give it a quick foam again. You really just don't want this stuff sitting and drying and baking in the sun. It's not good, you know, for your paint. It's not good for your plastics, anything like that, because this is a higher pH Decon soap. It's not pH neutral, so it could cause some damage if you're just letting it bake out in the sun for, you know, 10-15 minutes while you wash the car. So as far as washing goes, again, you know, standard wash process, top down, straight line motions. You don't need to do anything crazy here. Let the Decon soap do the work. You'll feel it's super, super slick. You know, couple, you know, do you know, kind of panels at a time. I like to do hood, or I like to do roof. I like to do the front and back glass. Then I can kind of switch my mid over. I'll go to the hood. I get all the top surfaces done first, and just rinse your mitt out as you feel necessary. I like to kind of go panel by panel, rinse my mitt out as I go, just to keep that mitt clean. Again, it's not super necessary right now because we are going to go into polishing anyway. So this thing is jacked up. Any little swirling I might do is not going to make it, you know, drop in the bucket to what is, you know, happening, or what's on the surface right now. But again, it's just best practice. You don't want to get used to, you know, doing a shoddy wash job, and then when you go to maintenance the car, you end up, you know, keeping that process and, you know, potentially swirling it up, especially with like a jet black soft Porsche, you know, clear coat like this, or, you know, Japanese car that might have some softer clear. You want to make sure that, you know, you got your wash process dialed in, so that way all this work that you're about to do doesn't just get, you know, tainted down the, you know, kind of thrown down the drain with one wash, because you know that can definitely happen if your wash process isn't dialed in. You could scratch, you know, 20 hours worth of work in 5 minutes. So you'll see I'm working top down. I'll go to my doors and, you know, things like that. But what I will skip, and I always leave till last no matter what wash I'm doing, is your rocker panels and your front and back bumpers. You see I haven't hit the rocker panel yet. I'm not gonna hit the back bumper. Those are gonna be the last things I touch because they're the dirtiest, and you don't want to transfer any of that dirt to, you know, the rest of the car potentially. So like I said, I've hit that whole side. You know, this side's already starting to dry. So that's why I do this last, so that now I'm reactivating the soap. And when I go to rinse here in a few minutes, that, you know, there's not gonna be any dried soap spots. And again, I'll monitor it if I need to. It's getting really hot out here. I'm sweating my butt off. If, you know, if you need to, just grab the hose or grab the, you know, whatever you're using, and, you know, give it a little rinse, you know, get some water back on the surface, or, you know, put some more, you know, foam on the surface, reactivate that soap, just so it's not sitting there baking. But you can easily do this outside. We do it all the time at our shop, and we wash hundreds and hundreds of cars a year, prepping them this way. We do it outside. We don't wash indoors. It's very easily doable. You just got to use your noggin a little bit, and, you know, use your eyes and just kind of make sure that stuff isn't doing what it shouldn't do, which is, you know, chemicals sitting to dry. So again, now I've got everything washed other than the front bumper, rockers, back bumper. Those are the things I'm leaving till last. Like I said, because those are your dirtiest areas. And then generally, I'll usually hit the front bumper first, rockers, then back bumper, because usually the back bumper is your dirtiest part of the car. So again, I'm segmenting it that way so that, you know, there might be bugs and stuff on the front bumper, but it's not going to be like straight road debris like from your tires kicking stuff up. That's the stuff that can really scratch your car. So I did the front bumper now, and now I'm going to stop for a second, put my mitt in there, and I'm going to check. Is my soap side drying? No, I'm looking pretty good. I can probably hit a couple rockers real quick before I need to give it just a quick kind of rehydrate to the soap. So let me hit these rockers, and then we'll go and do that so that the soap doesn't start drying. And I'll hit my back bumper last. Flipping the mid over, so I got a fresh side here for this other rocker. So now I can see, like I said, it's starting to dry a little bit. I could probably push it if I wanted to, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I'm just gonna give this a quick, and you're not even really rinsing it, right? You're just rehydrating it. So I'm just putting some water on the surface, making sure that it, you know, I'm not having anything that's just baking. So that's all I need, just to kind of rehydrate that soap, make sure it's not baking. And then I'll go hit the back bumper for the last step of the main wash part. And then always hit your lower bumper, you know, things like that last. Don't go from your lower bumper, like underneath your rocker, back to the top. So now your actual wash process is done, and, you know, the main contact wash, so you're just rinsing this off now. So I'm gonna actually go to the other side where, again, that sun is peaking most, and rinse that off first. And you can see, before we washed, the hood was beating a little bit. It had something on there. I think we put ceramic spray seal on it a few months ago, because it's been a few months since you know, we wanted to start this project, and now it's, you know, flat. So that shows you that, you know, the Decon soap is doing what it should, and it's, you know, kind of destroying that you know, that leftover sealant that was, you know, probably dying because it's been a few months, but you're just getting all that, those, you know, polymers and all that protection off, so you have a bare naked surface to, you know, really start from, and just the easiest way. So I'm just doing a nice rinse, getting all this soap off. Again, you want to be a little more thorough with this rinse, because again, it's a, you know, high pH soap, so you don't want to leave any, again, baking. So just rinse it off nice and thoroughly before we move on to our next step, which would be like the iron remover. So your next step of the process, now that you've finished your contact wash, you've finished your rinse off, is the, you know, chemical decontamination. So I've got our iron remover. You could obviously use it straight out of the spray bottle, spray the whole car. I like to put it in a pump sprayer. Just makes it a lot easier to transfer that to the surface. You'll also usually end up using a lot more out of this. This you can spray it a little finer mist, so it's just nicer. I know a lot of people will, you know, a lot of people have been taught or will, you know, do like a couple sprays into their clay media and clay. I personally don't love that process. I don't think there's enough lubrication. I don't think it's allowing the iron remover to really do what it needs to do, like chemically how the products are made. You know, maybe some are made differently than others. So ours, you want to mist it on the surface. You don't need to soak the whole car. Like you don't want to use 16 ounces or 32 ounces of iron remover on the car. You want to just give this a nice mist, allow it to dwell. Ours is made very thin so that when you spray it on, it will kind of wet the surface and kind of go out into a sheet. rather than some of these ones that are thicker. I know some people like them, but the problem is you spray those thicker ones and they stick to where you spray. So you get like these inconsistent spots where it's sprayed and you're not getting like that full, you know, kind of iron remover effect over the whole surface, and you end up using more because it's thicker and you're trying to spray so much on the surface to get it even. Whereas if you have a nice thin iron remover, it will wet the surface out. And then also ours is very fast acting, so you don't need to wait around for like 10 minutes for it to start working like some of those thicker ones where you have like the thickening agents basically like separating an iron remover, you know, chemistry from the surface. So this is just getting on the surface very evenly, going to work quick, and then you're done. So what I like to do with my process is spray the iron remover on. I'll spray it on the whole car, and then I'll come back. I'll give it a minute or two, and then I'll come back and I'll actually foam over it with Decon soap. So I have a little bit of Decon soap left in my foam cannon. I'll foam over it, giving that iron remover more time to work, and then I'll go with the clay with the iron remover and the Decon soap on the, you know, the car, so you get the extra lubrication from the Decon soap, the iron remover, and it's just a nice enjoyable process that way. So we'll get moving with that. I'll get the iron sprayed and we'll get the Decon soap onto the surface. So I like these pump sprayers. I know you can get the ones that have the, you know, the air injection or whatever, but again, you don't need to do a lot. Like I'm just doing boom, mist. Again, this one will wet out the surface. You don't need to spray a whole ton of iron remover. We have Jeremy over in our detail shop loves to use the whole gallon of iron remover on one car, but that's not the right process. Throwing Jeremy under the bus there a little bit. But again, I'll use very little iron remover on this car. You know, you're not using a whole ton. And you know, this process is very personal. There's, you know, everyone has a different way they do it. This is the way I've done it for years. This is the way I enjoy. I've tried every method. This is the one that I just stick with. Just seems to work the best for me. And the way the chemistry is made, this also seems to work, you know, to make the most sense. So again, that's, you know, I didn't really use much. I mean, this thing was like right here. So I probably used like 8 ounces iron remover. So that is on the surface. And again, you could technically go and just start claying with the iron remover on the surface or just spraying it in. It's just not my personal process. I like to add the foam. Again, it's also more cleaning power, more dwell time, you know, more lubrication, because no matter what people say, you know, these synthetic clays, they're really, really good, but they can still mar the surface. So adding that extra lubrication just helps prevent the marring, you know, kind of keep the marring down as much as possible. So now you've got that. Now you're ready to go to town with your clay. So you can pick your clay bar, or you can also pick synthetic clay. Obviously, I think most of the detail industry now has gone synthetic clay. What people don't realize is synthetic clay, while it's great, it only gets about 80% off. So if you have a really, really contaminated car, like white car with like those orange specks, you probably still want to use a clay bar, because that's what's actually going to get that off. These are going to get, like I said, 75, 80, 85%, which is good enough for when we're going to go into polishing, because anything that's left over after that, I can get off, you know, we'll get off while you're abrading the surface with the polish. This gets it good enough to where you can polish and not have the contamination get in your pad and kind of ruin the polishing process. This is brand new, so whenever you get a brand new synthetic clay specifically, you know, I will also put the clay into the bucket. That's also adding lubrication as I go. Always break it in on the windows. So I'll always do the windshield at minimum to break it in, because these do have like a coating on there to protect it while it's like in transit and things like that. And they can get stuck to the package a little bit. So breaking it in, getting that initial rubber like layer off on the glass helps, so that you're not marring the surface with like a, you know, the brand new clay. So now this is ready to go and primed. And like I said, this has PPF, but again, you can go right on the PPF. That's not a problem. Just be, you know, nice, gentle. I'm not putting crazy pressure. I'm just using friction more than anything to go over the surface. Fast,
arm movements, friction is what is removing the contamination, and you can feel it as you go. This thing doesn't have a ton of contamination, so I'm able to go through this pretty quickly. If you're feeling it and you feel a lot of contamination, you're probably gonna have to slow down and really make sure you get it all off. And this process doesn't matter really where you go because you've already cleaned the car. I still like to go top down roughly, but I'll usually just work one side, go to the other, and do that, because again, the car's been cleaned, so you don't need to go crazy thinking about, you know, dirt still on the surface or anything, especially if you've rinsed it. So just cleaning the surface, I'll go top down, I'll come on this side. Again, I've done a couple panels here, so I'm gonna go through, rinse that out in my Decon soap bucket, and then go back to the surface. That's not only cleaning this, but also adding more lubrication to the sponge so that you're reducing that marring potential as much as possible. Now with the PPF, you know, you can definitely go over it. Just be careful around the edges, especially like on the bumpers, if there's any seams or anything. Just be careful with like around those areas, or if you have like PPF that's been installed, like with not like a seamless install where the edges are wrapped, you want to be a little careful around those. But luckily this install is very, very good, and the edges are wrapped, so I have very little to worry about there. But you can feel, if you have an edge, the clay will kind of catch it, so just be a little cautious around the PPF. But the painted surfaces, the glass, anything like that, it's just going to go super smooth. You don't really have much to worry about. And I'm just going through and claying. And again, we are still using the Decon soap. You could switch to something else. You could switch to Shampoo Plus if you wanted. You could even use like Hero if you really wanted to during this step too. But since I am still using the Decon soap, you do want to be mindful still that, you know, I'm working in the sun, so make sure it's not drying. I'll stop right now and I'll inspect. Back bumper's drying a little bit, so I'll get the hose and just rinse that and keep it nice and hydrated so that we're not running into any drying issues. And you'll just go through the whole car. You'll go through the whole car, and then once you're finished the whole car, we'll jump back through and get the car inside and dried up. So now I've gone over the whole car with the clay scrubber, iron remover on the surface, Decon soap on the surface, keeping it wet as I saw it starting to dry because we are out here in the sun. This side's in the shade, but that side is in full sun. The back is in full sun. So that's drying pretty quickly, but as long as you manage it, you're not gonna run into any issues. So now, last part of the process is just rinsing it down, getting all this chemical off the surface, and then we are ready to get it pulled inside, get it inspected, get onto the polishing, and get on to the full rest of the process. So I'm gonna rinse this off and we'll catch up to you guys once we get inside. Whew, it is hot and I am sweaty. Luckily, we're inside in the AC now, so all is well from here on forward. So we obviously did the full decon process, finished up with the iron remover and the clay, got it rinsed down, and then now pulled inside. So the only part left to do for the prep is to give it a nice dry. I've got just one of our plush twist loop drying towels here. There's a few things you could do here. If you wanted to use a drying aid, I probably wouldn't recommend something like our amplifier or ceramic spray sealant because it's just kind of a waste. You're going to go into polishing anyways. You could dilute some Hero, doesn't have any protection, and dry it. Again, any little marring that I put in from drying without a lubrication right now isn't really going to make much of a difference because we're polishing anyways. If you weren't going to go ahead and polish afterwards, then I would recommend probably diluting some Hero 64:1, using it as your drying aid just to minimize any sort of marring that you might do with just a dry with water drying towel. But for me, I know I'm polishing. It's just kind of a waste. So I'm just going to go ahead and just give it a quick dry over. The other thing to think about too is I usually like to time my preps in the afternoon so that they have all night to really just dry and like let all the cracks and the seals dry out. If you're doing this in the morning and you're going to try to basically try to polish the car the same day, you're gonna want some sort of blower or something of that sort to blow out all the cracks and crevices, and you're gonna need to take some time to do that too, to get all that out, because once you start taping and once you start polishing, all that water is gonna wanna come out of those cracks and crevices. So in my process, I usually like to time it the evening before or the afternoon before, preferably evening if you can, because it's gonna be much cooler in the evening too. You're not gonna be having to deal with the direct sun like I was. And then you can just dry it with a towel like I am. You don't have to go crazy drying all the cracks and crevices. And then you can just let it air dry overnight. And then when you come in the morning, it'll be ready to tape, ready to start polishing. And you're not gonna have to deal with all of the, the fuss of cracks and crevices, trying to leak water while you're taping, and your tape not sticking, and water getting in your polish and flinging everywhere. And it just becomes a mess. So otherwise, just make sure you have a blower on hand to blow all that water out. I don't in this shop, so we're gonna time, we time this so that tomorrow is when we're gonna start polishing. So I'm gonna have a whole, evening and night to be able to let this dry up, let everything leak out, tape it all in the morning, and we'll go from there. So this is, the last part of the process of doing the decon, is just getting all this water off. If you're gonna blow it off. And then you're ready to jump in the next step, which is taping, polishing, doing your your test spot, and seeing what's gonna work for the paint. So congratulations, you just finished doing your first decon wash if you're following along, or hopefully you learned something about my process of doing a decon wash and how our products can be used in that process. Maybe there was something that I did that you haven't thought of before, and kind of helped you with your process. Again, this is all personal, even though me and DJ are very in tune, his process is a little different than mine. He's one of those that likes to spray the iron into the clay bar or the the clay mitt and clay. It's just not my preference. So even two people, as we talk every day, we very much detail the same way. We like the same type of products. We agree on almost everything. Even with two people like that, the process of how they prefer to do something may be slightly different. And it's totally okay. This is the way I do it. And there's 400 ways to decon your car, and a lot of people will think I'm wasting time, and some people might think I'm going too fast, or too in detail. So again, it's all personal preference, and you can kind of as you do a few of these, you'll learn your process on what you like to do and what works for you. Whether you have a wash bay, you're indoors, what type of products you're using, how they work, and things of that nature. But you can develop, or you can kind of transfer my process a little bit into a lot of different products, and things that you have on hand as well, which will kind of make those products work a little bit better if possible, and just make your process a little bit easier. So again, that's really it. And we'll wrap up this video here, and the next video will be going into, again, the taping, the polishing, and all of that. But this drying phase here wraps up the decon process. And any questions you guys might have, anything of that nature, leave them down in the comments. If you learned something, let me know what you learned. If you didn't like something about my process, let me know. I'm always willing to learn something new. This is the way that my shop, Naples Auto Armor, does it. This is the way we prep hundreds of cars a year. So just wanted to share what works for us, and yeah, kind of go from there. So have some fun detailing, get out there, use some products, decon your car, get it polished, get it coated. You're gonna love your car so much more after you do this process. So just have some fun detailing, and hope you learned something.